I remember the sound of laughter, not the polite kind, not the nervous kind that people make when they don't know what else to do. Real laughter, the kind that comes from children who have forgotten, even for a moment, that the world is trying to kill them. That sound became my religion, my reason for waking up, my proof that something worth saving still existed in this hell we were living through. My name is Kateryna, and I was a nurse in Mariupol before the word Mariupol became synonymous with destruction. I worked in a pediatric hospital, the kind of place that smelled like antiseptic and hope, where the walls were painted with cartoon characters, and the worst thing we dealt with was a child afraid of needles. I had been a nurse for 15 years. I thought I had seen everything. I had seen nothing. The invasion came like a storm you know is coming but can never truly prepare for. We had been hearing the warnings, watching the news, seeing the troops gathering at the borders. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it in your bones are different things. When the first bombs fell, when the building shook and the windows shattered and the screams began, that's when I understood. This wasn't going to be a chapter in a history book I would read someday. This was going to be my life if I survived it. The hospital became a fortress. Not by choice, but by necessity. Patients who should have been discharged had nowhere to go. Their homes were gone, their neighborhoods erased. Doctors who should have evacuated stayed because leaving meant abandoning people who would die without them. We worked in shifts that lasted days, sleeping in supply closets when we could sleep at all, eating whatever scraps we could find, operating by flashlight when the power went out, which was almost always. I had a daughter, Oksana. She was 9 years old. With blonde hair she refused to brush, and a gap between her front teeth that made her self-conscious when she smiled. She was staying with my sister in Lviv when the war started, far from the Eastern Front, supposedly safe. I spoke to her every day while the phone still worked, listened to her tell me about school and friends and the cat she wanted to adopt. I made her promise to be good, to listen to her aunt, to do her homework. Normal mother things. Things that felt obscene when children were dying in the basement below me. The last time we spoke. She asked me when I was coming home. I told her soon, even though I didn't know if home existed anymore, even though I didn't know if I would survive to see her again. She said she loved me. I said I loved her too. Then the line went dead. The networks were down. The city was being encircled. I tried for days to reach her, to reach anyone, but there was only silence. The kind of silence that eats you alive with possibilities you can't bear to imagine. I carried the wounded on my back. Literally. When the upper floors became too dangerous, when patients needed to be moved to the basement, when the elderly and the injured couldn't walk, I carried them. I'm not a large woman. Before the war, I struggled to lift a heavy grocery bag. But desperation gives you strength you didn't know you had. Adrenaline makes you superhuman. Or maybe it's not superhuman at all. Maybe it's just human, stripped down to what we're capable of when everything else is gone. There was a boy named Dima, 7 years old. Both his parents were killed in a bombing while they tried to evacuate. He was brought to us with shrapnel wounds and eyes that had seen his entire world end. He didn't cry. That was the worst part. He should have been crying, screaming, anything. But he just stared at nothing, silent and still, like he had left his body and gone somewhere else where the pain couldn't reach him. I spent every free moment I had with him. I would sit by his bed and tell him stories. Fairy tales at first, the kind every Ukrainian child knows. But fairy tales felt wrong somehow, too distant from the reality we were living. So I started telling him the truth instead. I told him that the world was broken but not destroyed. That people were capable of terrible things but also beautiful things. That his parents had loved him enough to try to save him, and that love didn't die even when people did. I don't know if he believed me. I don't know if I believed me, but I kept talking anyway. Slowly, over weeks that felt like years, Dima came back. First a word, then a sentence, then a question. He asked me if his parents were in heaven. I told him I didn't know where heaven was, but I knew they were somewhere they weren't hurting anymore, somewhere they were proud of how brave he was being. He asked me if he could stay with me. I told him yes. I told him I would keep him safe. I had no idea how I would keep that promise, but I made it anyway because he needed to hear it. We created a children's corner in the basement, a space where the kids who had lost everything could just be kids for a few hours a day. We had no toys, no games, no books. So we made them. We drew pictures on the backs of medical charts. We created stories from nothing. We sang songs in the darkness. Other nurses and volunteers joined in. We became a strange kind of family, bound together not by blood, but by shared trauma and the desperate need to create something good in the midst of all the horror. I taught them a game. When the bombing got particularly bad, when the ceiling shook and dust rained down and everyone was terrified, we would count the seconds between explosions. Not out of fear, but as a challenge. Who could count the highest? Who could stay calmest? We turned terror into competition, made survival a game. It was manipulation, maybe, a way to trick their minds into coping. But it worked. They stopped screaming during attacks. They started counting instead. I learned their stories. Every child had lost someone. Parents, siblings, grandparents, friends. Every child had seen things no one should see, especially not children. Homes destroyed while they were inside them. People dying in front of them. Violence that would mark them forever. But they were also still children. They still wanted to play. They still needed hugs. They still asked questions about when things would be normal again, as if normal was a place we could return to if we just waited long enough. There was a moment I'll never forget. We had been in the basement for 3 weeks straight. No one had seen sunlight. The attacks had been relentless. We were running out of everything: food, water, medicine, hope. I was sitting with Dima and a few other children, trying to keep them distracted, when one of the girls, Anya, started humming a song. Just quietly, almost to herself. Then another child joined in. Then another. Soon all of them were singing, this small choir of broken children, and the sound was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard. I started crying. I couldn't help it. I had held it together for weeks, stayed strong because they needed me to be strong. But in that moment, I broke. Not from sadness, though there was plenty of that. From something else. From the realization that beauty could still exist here. That innocence hadn't been completely destroyed. That these children, who had every reason to give up, were still trying to find joy. They were teaching me how the evacuation attempts were nightmares. We tried multiple times to get civilians out of the city through humanitarian corridors that kept collapsing. Buses would be arranged, people would gather, and then the shelling would start. We would run back to the basement, dragging whoever we could, leaving behind whatever couldn't be carried. I saw people killed while trying to evacuate. I saw families torn apart. I saw the worst of what humans can do to each other, but I also saw the best. I saw strangers shielding children with their own bodies. I saw elderly men refusing evacuation so that younger people could take their spots. I saw volunteers running into danger to pull out the wounded. I saw doctors operating under fire because stopping meant patients would die. I saw humanity persist in conditions designed to destroy it. We finally got a group of children out on the 7th evacuation attempt. Dima was among them. I had to physically put him on the bus because he didn't want to leave me. He cried and clung to my coat and begged me to come with him. I told him I had to stay, that other children needed me, that I would see him again soon. I don't know if that was true. I don't know if I'll ever see him again, but I needed him to believe it. I needed to believe it too. I watched that bus drive away with 15 children on it, 15 lives that might have a future now. And I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not happiness exactly, not relief, but something like purpose. Like maybe all of this suffering wasn't completely meaningless if even one child made it out. If even one child got to grow up. If even one child got to smile again. I stayed in Mariupol for another month after that. The city fell. The hospital was finally destroyed completely. Most of us evacuated to different cities, different countries, different lives. I ended up in Poland, in a refugee center that felt like a palace compared to what we had been living in. Hot water, electricity, food whenever you wanted it. It should have felt like salvation. Instead, it felt like guilt. Why did I get to leave when so many didn't? Why did I get to be warm and fed when children were still dying in basements? I found Oksana. She was alive. My sister had kept her safe throughout everything. When I finally held her again, when I smelled her hair and felt her arms around my neck, I broke completely. All the strength I had maintained, all the walls I had built to keep functioning, they all came down at once. I sobbed into her shoulder while she patted my back and told me it was okay. This 9-year-old child comforting her mother who had seen too much, she asked me what happened. I told her I helped people. I told her I took care of children who needed someone. I didn't tell her about the bodies. I didn't tell her about the surgeries without anesthesia. I didn't tell her about the sounds of children crying for parents who would never come. I didn't tell her that I had contemplated giving up 1,000 times. I didn't tell her that the only thing that kept me going was imagining her face, imagining holding her again, imagining a future where she could be a child without knowing war, but she knew anyway. Children always know. She looked at me with eyes that were older than they should be, and she said, "You were brave, Mama." And I realized that I hadn't protected her from knowing what the world was capable of. The war had touched all of us, even the children far from the fighting. They saw the news. They heard the adults talking. They felt the fear. You can't shield children from war when war is everywhere. I started volunteering at refugee centers, working with children who had made it out. Helping them process trauma I understood intimately because I carried my own. I organized playgroups, art therapy sessions, music classes. Anything to help them remember how to be children. Anything to give them back what war had stolen. They painted pictures of tanks and explosions at first. Then, slowly, they started painting flowers, rainbows, houses with smoke coming from chimneys that meant warmth, not fire. Families holding hands. Hope returning in primary colors. I think about the children I couldn't save. The ones who died in the basement. The ones I had to leave behind. The ones on buses that never made it to safety. They visit me in my dreams. Not as nightmares exactly. More like reminders that they existed, that they mattered, that their lives, however brief, deserve to be remembered. I carry their names with me. I speak them out loud sometimes when I'm alone so they're not forgotten. So someone remembers that they were here. The war continues. As I write this, people are still dying. Cities are still being destroyed. Children are still losing their parents. Mothers are still losing their children. The world watches and debates and sends aid and imposes sanctions, and nothing stops. Nothing changes. The machine keeps grinding forward, consuming lives, destroying futures, creating trauma that will echo through generations. But here's what I learned in that basement in Mariupol. You can't stop the war. You can't make the world make sense. You can't prevent loss or protect everyone you love or fix what's broken. But you can carry one more person to safety. You can comfort one more frightened child. You can tell one more story that makes someone forget the horror for 5 minutes. You can create one more moment of laughter in the darkness. I carried the wounded on my back, not because I'm strong, but because I had a back to carry them with. Because I was there and they needed help, and there was no one else. It wasn't heroism. It was just being human in a situation designed to strip away humanity. It was refusing to be crushed by what I couldn't change and instead focusing on what I could. The children taught me this. They taught me that resilience isn't about being strong. It's about finding ways to smile when smiling should be impossible. It's about singing songs in the dark. It's about counting seconds during bombardments and turning terror into a game. It's about drawing pictures of flowers when you're surrounded by destruction. They survived not by being tough, but by holding on to the small pieces of joy that the war couldn't take. I still have nightmares. I still wake up thinking I'm back in basement, hearing the bombs, smelling the blood and antiseptic and fear. I still carry guilt about the ones I couldn't save. I still wonder if I did enough, said the right things, made the right choices. I probably never will stop wondering. Trauma doesn't heal cleanly. It becomes part of you, something you learn to live with, something that changes the shape of who you are forever. But I also have this. I know that 15 children are alive because we got them on that bus. I know that Dima is living with a family in Germany and goes to school and is learning to be a child again. I know that the children I work with now are painting fewer tanks and more flowers. I know that I held my daughter again when I thought I never would. I know that I survived when I shouldn't have, and that means something. It has to mean something. Oksana asked me recently if I regret staying in Mariupol, if I wish I had left sooner so I could have been with her. I told her the truth. I told her that not being with her was the hardest thing I've ever done, that every day I wasn't holding her was agony, that I will carry the guilt of that separation forever. But I also told her that children needed me and I couldn't abandon them, that if I had left, some of them would have died, that the choice to stay was the choice to save lives, even if it meant risking my own. She thought about this for a long time. Then she said, "I'm proud of you, Mama." And I realized that maybe that's the only redemption available to any of us. Not that we were perfect. Not that we made all the right choices. Not that we saved everyone. But that we tried. That we did what we could with what we had. That we remained human when everything around us is human. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe the war will end and we'll rebuild. Maybe it will continue and destroy everything. Maybe Dima will grow up to be a doctor who saves lives. Maybe the children I worked with will carry their trauma forever and struggle to be whole. Maybe Oksana will forgive me for not being there when she needed me. Maybe she won't. The future is uncertain in ways it never was before. The war taught me that everything can be taken away in an instant, that tomorrow is a gift. Not a guarantee, but I also learned this. As long as children can still laugh, as long as they can still sing songs in the darkness, as long as they can still imagine a better world, then hope survives. Not the naive hope I had before the war, not the belief that everything will be okay, but something harder, more resilient. The hope that says we will keep trying even when trying feels pointless. The hope that says love persists even when everything else is destroyed. The hope that says we are more than the worst things that happen to us. I carried the wounded on my back because I could, because they needed carrying and I had strength left to carry them. I helped children smile again, not because I'm special, but because they needed someone to remember that smiling was still possible. I survived the war not because I'm brave, but because I found purpose in the midst of destruction. Because I focused on saving one life at a time when I couldn't save everyone. Because I held on to small moments of joy when joy seemed impossible. This is what I want people to understand about war. It's not abstract. It's not strategy and politics and territories. It's children in basements counting seconds between explosions. It's nurses using vodka as antiseptic. It's mothers separated from their children, wondering if they'll ever see them again. It's ordinary people forced to become extraordinary simply to survive. It's humanity tested in ways that should never be necessary, but somehow reveal what we're truly capable of. Tadima, wherever you are, you taught me how to survive by showing me that children can find joy even in hell. You reminded me why fighting for tomorrow matters. You gave me purpose when I thought I had none. Keep counting. Keep smiling. Keep remembering that you survived, and that survival means something. To Oksana, my light in the darkness. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry you had to be brave without me. I'm sorry the world we brought you into turned into this. But I promise you that I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it better. Trying to help children smile the way I want you to smile. Trying to create a future where no other mother has to make the choice I made. To all the children still in basements, still afraid, still hoping, someone is trying to reach you. Someone is carrying the wounded on their back to get to you. Someone is refusing to give up, even when giving up would be easier. Someone remembers that you matter, that your life has value, that you deserve to smile again. Hold on, keep counting. Keep singing. Keep hoping. We are coming for you. I'm still here, still carrying, still helping, still fighting to see children smile again. Because that smile, that pure moment of joy despite everything, is proof that they haven't won. That they can't win. That as long as one child can still laugh, the war hasn't destroyed what matters most. As long as one person still cares enough to carry another, humanity survives. And I will carry them. I will carry as many as I can, for as long as I can, until my back breaks, or the war ends, or I can't carry anymore. Because someone has to. Because they deserve to be carried. Because in the end, that's all any of us can do. Pick up whoever we can reach and keep moving forward. One step at a time, toward whatever tomorrow might bring. The children are smiling again. Not all of them, not always, but sometimes. And sometimes is enough. Sometimes is everything.